Oh my goodness, building a portfolio, no money down. So many times I've heard this can't be done. I've seen it all over the place on the internet. You can't do it. Well, I can assure you, you can, and I know because I've done it and so's hundreds of my clients. So, how is it done? Well, let's roll backwards a little bit. 24 strategies. This is the first one, building a portfolio, no money down. You need to choose 3 strategies in total. Please don't try and do more than that, otherwise you'll start spaghetti heading. Okay? And if you're working full time and your time is limited, then you're probably better sticking to 2 strategies. So, when you go through these strategy videos, do not try and do 8 at once. It just won't work. Stick to 2 if you work full time, or 3 if you're in property full time. Right, okay, let's move forward. Traditionally investing means buying a property, swapping cash for cash flow, i.e. 100 grand in, or 100 grand property, 25 grand in, maybe 15 grand in if it's on an 85% loan to value, but they're increasingly struggling to work and the numbers work. So what micro market are we going to target for this strategy? Okay, how do we choose an area? Right, let me tell you something that's really, really important. Some of my clients, or a couple, in 2005, after I taught them how to do no money down, ended up buying a portfolio in Blackpool. That portfolio that they built within a short period of time cash flowed them £7,000 a month. Now, many, many years later, it still cash flows them £7,000 a month. The properties have not gone up in value. When properties go up in value, what else happens over time? The rent goes up as well. So their net worth has not increased. They've had a great passive income for many, many years for something they did once. When I look at what I did with my portfolio, when I built that, over 200 properties, cash flowing £200,000 a month, with over £100,000, just over £100,000 a month profit, over a 10-year period, that's like £1 million a year cash flow. So your cash flow is your standard of living. Your capital appreciation is your net worth. So even though the portfolio was earning £1 million a year over 10 years, is 10 million, the net worth of it went up to 30 million. So where do you want to be? Do you want to be in an area of capital appreciation or no capital appreciation? Now, the next challenge is if we start moving into the higher priced areas like London specifically, where the capital appreciation is at its greatest, the yield is really low. Now, when I've analysed how I did what I did, I was buying properties with £20,000 to £30,000 discount in them. Okay, I was doing them in a slightly different way, and I'll explain how I did them. But now, because of the mortgage product changes, there's a different way of doing it, and I'll explain that as well. Okay, but let's just recap. I was buying properties no money down, and I was buying them with 20 to 30 grand discount. That meant whenever I, let's say, found a 140 grand house for 100 grand, and I did it the way I did it, and I'm going to explain it later on, I would be rung by the solicitors and asked, because 85% of 140 is 119, I was paying 19 grand for the property, the solicitors were ringing me up and going, where would you like the 19 grand sent, Glenn? Not ringing me up, goes, where is the deposit? Okay, so we've got to be very careful, because in the higher value properties, you can still get 20 to 30 grand discount if you're buying well and you're buying from a motivated seller, but the chances are, for definite, that isn't going to be enough to cover your deposit that you need. So we're very niche in the target market that we're aiming at. the price bracket that we're aiming at. So we want to be higher than Group 1 that we discussed earlier, the 60 grand average kind of 3-bed, bottom of the area, 3 out of 10 type of area micro market. We want to be in that, but not in the 60 grand area. We want to be in about 110 grand area, because by default that actually has got capital appreciation. And after all, that's our net worth. We want both. So what we're going to do, we are going to literally market for deals. I'm going to talk about that. We're going to negotiate deals. I'm going to share with you how to do that. And so I'm going to take you through the whole process. So, right, where do we get the properties from? Because a lot of people will deal with estate agents. Now, yes, I did get properties for my no money left in portfolio from agents, but it's very difficult to negotiate a deal with them in the way that we structure it now. And just remember, if it's on the market, it's a retail deal. We're looking for trade deals. There's only 1 or 2 investors that get the trade deals from every agent. So unless that's you, the best way and most consistent way is to have a budget and advertise on either pay-per-click or on Facebook marketing. I used to do everything by leaflets and by newspaper adverts, but we've tried them, and over the last 4 or 5 years they've not worked. So we do our advertising, and I have got specialists who will do that for you. If you have bought our training, then you are more than happy to pass over the details of the people that can do this for you. Okay. How I did it, which doesn't actually apply right now, but I'd like to explain to you how I managed, and I started off with around 100 grand, but started off with that figure. I managed to buy straight off the bat, once I discovered this system I'm about to explain, 52 properties in 48 weeks. I like to work off targets. I set myself a target of buying 52 properties in 52 weeks and did it in 48. What exactly did I do? Advertise for properties, just like I'm explaining for you to do, except we're using more modern marketing techniques, okay? And then negotiating with vendors, exactly the same negotiation. That does not change. I'll go into full details in a little while, okay? So then the actual process. When I first started in properties, I bought 6 properties and ran out of money. And my biggest challenge was, although I bought the properties very well, and I bought them by advertising, so I got a great discount, I was told by everyone you had to wait for 6 months before you could refinance them. So I paid my solicitors, it was £2,000, to go through all of the different contracts of all the different building societies to see if there was a way around it. Now at the time, Bourbon Midshires would allow you to refinance a property with them, not after 6 months, but as soon as it was registered with Land Registry. Now that was great, because that meant the 6 properties that I bought and run out of money, I could refinance straight away, get my money back out and roll, and that's when I did roll. Okay, and then a little bit later the solicitors phoned me and said, do you know what? There's a company called Mortgage Express. They were part of Bradford and Bingley, who are with us no more. There's a company called Mortgage Express, and they will allow you to apply to refinance a property before you own it. Okay. Now I'm going to digress slightly and tell you a story about when I was talking at Excel to a group of around 400 people, and I was terrified because it was one of the first talks I'd ever done, and I was expecting an audience of about 30. So I stood up and made that statement. I like to apply to refinance a property before I bought it. And someone at the back of the room, bear in mind I've got 400 people looking at me, stood up and shouted out, you can't do that, that's illegal, I should know, I'm a solicitor. So I'm like, oh. Okay, fortunately I knew the answer, and because I'd had many of my clients that had said to me, Glenn, my solicitor said you can't do it. So my answer to him was, do you know what? Most solicitors think the same as you. And you're right, most building societies won't allow it. But Mortgage Express will. And if you read page 3, paragraph, and I can't remember exactly, but I used to know it off by heart, paragraph such, you'll find out that they would allow it. And then you will become one of the few solicitors who know and be able to make money from it. So all 400 heads then turn around back to me, when I was explaining it. So it was like, whew, okay, cool, roll on. So the secret was finding and doing the negotiation, finding a property, doing a negotiation. So if I could find a property that would value at £140,000 and I could negotiate a deal at £100,000, I would apply to refinance it based on the value of 140. And the surveyors would come along, and if they valued it at 140, the Building Society would offer me then 85% of 140, which is 119,000. So literally on the day, and I set up a bridging company, so I was doing this lending for one day to people as a business. So I could lend it to myself, so it was quite easy. I was a little bit of a step ahead, as I like to think I always am. So I would put 100 grand to the solicitors. The solicitors would already have drawn down the mortgage before I sent 100 grand, okay? But they wouldn't have done the paperwork. As soon as they've received the 100 grand, they would purchase the property from the vendors with that 100 grand, and then they would refinance it. And they would be ringing me going, Len, stamp duty is this is this, this is this, but where do we send the 19 grand less the cost? So every time I bought a property, I got paid. Now, how would it be for you if every time you bought a property, you got paid? Now, the good news for you is that I, who always like to stay one step ahead, have found a way that works in the current climate and the current system where you can do a very similar thing, and you can end up on every purchase with a little bit more cash than what you started with, providing you buy it at enough discount. Hence my expression, we're using a discount for our deposit. So it is possible to get cash back on every deal. Now let me ask you a question. How big a portfolio can you build if you don't need any money to build it? Let me ask you again. How big a portfolio can you build if you don't need any money to build it? Okay, a couple of grand for the advertising. Where are we going to find the deals with the 20 or 30 grand discount that we can use for our deposit? Don't forget, I'm going to explain how the structure works later on now. Now, how we do it is by marketing for deals. We're trying to find vendors who are motivated, and the reason for their sale, okay, they need speed because of something rather than the maximum value. They are prepared to swap speed for the amount they get for whatever their reason. And I'm going to again explain that in full details. So how do we find them? First of all, there is no point in marketing in higher value areas, because we've tried for years. One of my clients actually spent £20,000 advertising in North London and got zero, absolutely nothing from it. He had a car all painted up, cash paid for properties, and he got nothing. It was a smart car, he didn't very often go out of town. Then for one day, for one reason, he actually needed to use that car to go to Liverpool. I don't know who'd want to go to Liverpool in a smart car from London, but hey, he did. Had all the cash paid for property stuff all over it, and when he got there, he spent the day, he came back, he actually got a couple of calls from that car, having spent over a year of not getting any in London. So what that says, I don't know. And another funny story, I know I keep digressing, but the original motive or the wording that he wanted to put on the car, rather than getting its sign written, he had a magnetic sign done to put on the side of his car. But it was a smart car, it was plastic, it just dropped on the floor. So he got some ribbing about that. Anyway, moving forward, because that's quite a few years ago now. The marketing through Facebook or through pay-per-click can be very targeted, so you can target your area and you can target postcodes within your area. Okay. Now, from what I do know from talking to people that do it, they get a much higher response rate from Facebook than they do pay-per-click, but a much higher proportion of the pay-per-click responses actually get processed and go through the actual to the deal. So overall, the cost of them is about the same, and they're spending on average around about £2,000 in marketing to get one deal with £20,000 to £30,000 discount in it. So you need to, don't run 50 quid's worth of adverts and tell me, oh, I didn't get any results. Obviously, if you use the experts, they know the little niche details that need to go in for finding them. But if you do Facebook marketing yourself, or you do pay-per-click, or you've got a friend that does it well, then you may wish to go with them. But the principle is you have a budget, you generate leads, and then you make appointments, and you follow my nibbling process that I'm going to explain in a minute to negotiate the deal. So you end up with a discount against market price, and you use that discount for your deposit. And just one other thing I'd like to add, don't forget, okay, that you are marketing, you're finding a town that this works in, something like Nottinghamshire, maybe right currently now, but that's going to change as we move through and property prices gradually increase. But we're looking for properties that are worth around about 110, 120 grand, which in the micro area of the area you're looking for are about 3 out of 10. So it's at the lower end of the market of 3-bed properties we're looking at, to be priced at around 110 grand. And you're looking at buying it for, maybe 80, 90 grand. So that discount, I'm going to explain exactly how using our no money down process, you end up buying a property without needing any cash. So the negotiation process is key, and one of the most important things to remember is to make sure you stick by my guidelines of assumptive closing. What is assumptive closing? Well, we discussed that in one of my recent Zoom courses, and I'm going to share that with you now, and that's going to be followed by the actual negotiation process. Okay, so you've got to imagine we're negotiating on a property. Now, let's say it's worth 140 and I'm trying to offer you 100 through my process, yeah? And I say to you, okay, and all that it's going through my head, this is a really cheap offer, and I don't think you're ever going to accept the offer, and it's going through my head. So I'm coming across, and you're picking up subconsciously, not even consciously, you're picking up my physiology and tonality. So I'm like, well, I don't suppose you're, and I know it's a little bit on the low side, but how does an offer of 100 grand sound? Now, if you don't believe that you are making a sensible offer for a property in a set of circumstances, and you go in like all fluffy, wavy with your voice all over the place, there's no way that anyone's ever going to accept a deal. So I'm going to run through a process, but at the end of the process I'll be saying something like, okay, so look, I've gone through the figures with you, Pavleen, and obviously it comes out to that for me to be able to go and make a profit on this property, but to buy it very quickly, I can offer you 100 grand for it. Okay, now that for me is an assumptive close. That's me assuming that that's good for you and you're going to accept. Okay? So,
and you're talking to me without any agent or anyone involved?
Yeah, yes. If we're direct to vendor, yeah. Okay. Because if you're negotiating with anybody about anything, they subconsciously pick up on your physiology and tonality, which you subconsciously give out. So this isn't even stuff that is held at a conscious level. But if it's someone experienced, it stands out like a sore thumb. Okay? There are so many aspects of negotiation, and we're going to talk about advanced negotiation stuff and using NLP, neuro-linguistic programming stuff for negotiation. Okay? Because when you're negotiating with somebody, most people are a certain, what we call a modality. That means that primarily you're either visual, auditory, that means you prefer to listen, or kinesthetic, which means touchy-feely. So if I'm going to make an offer to somebody who's in the sound version, yeah. So not. So I'm just trying to think of the word now. I forgot the word.
Auditory.
Auditory, yeah. So if I'll say to them, how does that sound to you? Okay. If they're kinesthetic, I go, how does that offer feel? Yeah. Or if they're visual, I'll be saying, how does that look to you? And that is a tiny little difference to the feeling that the person gets when they're doing a deal with you. Okay, well, I'm going to talk all about that in a minute. I'm going to talk about assumptive closing, and to use the example of assumptive closing, I'm going to talk about two people who, when I was buying and selling cars for a living, I was car trading and I had a garage for a little while selling cars. I'm going to talk about two people in there who were the best two salesmen I've ever come across. Okay? So let's just assume, so thank you Padmini, let's go to Keith, and I'm only really picking on the people who I can see their faces. Okay? So if you're not showing me your face, that's probably why I'm not having conversations with you. So it's nothing personal. I just love to be able to see who I'm talking to and get feedback from your expressions. Keith, let's just assume that you're in the market for some sort of Vauxhall Vectra or something, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. And Alan worked for a very large Vauxhall dealership that had quite a large stock of cars, okay? And there were 7 other sales reps, so there was 8 sales reps in the garage, and every single month without fail he sold more cars put together himself than all the other 7 sales reps put together. So for me, this is fascinating stuff. I want to know what he's doing. Every month I'm going in, I'm looking at the board in the office that I was going into to buy their trade cars, and I'm seeing Alan top by miles, not just a bit. And adding up, how can one person sell more than 7 people? So, if I got a chance and he was with clients, I'd sit and listen. And so his conversation would go somewhere like this. So, Keith, you're coming here because you're looking for a car to buy, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, and what is it you're looking for the car to do?
I want it to carry my family and have enough space in the back to go out on holiday with them.
Okay, so what model is it? What car is it you're looking to buy?
Something a bit, not necessarily a state car, but something with a hatchback I think would be most suitable.
Okay, so what did you have in mind?
I don't know, a nice Vectra.
Okay.
Would fit the bill, I think.
So 5-door Vectra, yeah?
Yeah, 5-door, definitely has to be 5-door.
Alright, so petrol or diesel?
I don't really mind, really. I need to know what the figures are.
Okay.
The NPG to decide.
Okay, well let's have a look at that now. And so we'd work that out now. And you decide now whether you want a petrol or a diesel or a 2.2 or a 2 litre or whatever it is, yeah? So we'd sort that one out with you there and now, okay? Okay, so we're looking for a 2.2 diesel. Alright, auto, manual.
I think auto, because I don't mind having the expense of replacing clutches.
Okay, cool. And what colour car are you looking for?
Oh, I like red and I like silver, but if it's a really nice blue, I'll try like the blue ones.
Okay, but your preference is red, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, and interior, cloth, leather?
I like leather, to be honest, because it's easy to clean all the sticky things off from the kitchen suites.
Okay, and if it was leather, what colour would it be?
I'd like dark grey or light grey.
Okay, all right. So, all right, now, because of their stock and probably because you've seen it advertised, that car probably exists on our forecourt, yeah? So Alan would say, okay, well, look, we've got a red 5-door 2.2 petrol, and let's also establish your budget. You haven't got a part exchange and your budget is, let's say, £500 a month, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he would then go and say, yeah, okay, well, we've got just the car. And you get in the car and you test drive it, yeah?
Yes.
And he'd come back in, sit back down, sit you at the desk, and he'd start writing out paperwork. Okay, and then he'd hold out the paperwork and say, sign there, you can pick it up on Wednesday. I've managed to get it to you for 480 quid a month over 4 years.
Yeah, can you explain why I'm signing while I'm reading it, please?
But he would do that, he would go through, but what he used to do is write the order form out. He never used to say to anybody, what do you think of that? How do you think about it? Yeah, nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he was a little bit on the autistic spectrum, okay? But his assumptive close was, you told him, because I asked him about it, and I said, well, you don't ask them what they think. He's gone, well, why would I?
Yeah.
Yeah, because like they told me they want a red Vectra, 5-door, 2.2 diesel, blah, 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 blah. And that's what they've been and driven, okay, to make sure it drives all right. It drives all right. So he just wrote the paperwork out. And when he wrote the paperwork out and held it out for people to sign, I used to watch the pain in their eyes and like the almost rabbit headlights going, because it's not normal, is it?
No.
For them to just sign here, I've got it in on your budget, push sign here and you can pick it up on Wednesday. And yeah, he sold car after car, and I'd see couples both looking at each other. Like, and very seldom did any of them say anything, they'd just sign it. Okay?
Shock value.
Pardon?
Shock value.
Shock value, okay.
Was he a big guy?
Not really, it's just, 5'8", 5'10". No, it wasn't intimidation. It was just the way he came across. He just total belief that you've told him all that stuff. And if anyone was like, well, I don't want time to think about it, he'd be very like, sorry, what do you mean? What's the problem? You came in and you told me you wanted this, and I've given you exactly what you want. What's your problem? And that's how he was. Simple as that. Okay. Pardon?
A bit autistic.
Yeah, I think he's probably I think he was a bit, but yeah, that was Alan, and it worked really well. And all I'm saying is, in property or in any form of negotiation, that level of confidence that somebody's going to do a deal will subconsciously come across to them, okay? And they are far more likely to do a deal than if you're wobbling all over the place. Yeah.
You're confident that you know that it's right for them.
Yeah, exactly. And he's doing it. He's doing it from.
It's right for them.
Yeah, and he's doing it congruently. He's got total belief in what he's doing, and that he's giving them what they want. Because that's what, after all, that's what they've told him he wants. Okay, right. So thank you, Keith. Right, I'm gonna go to Jimmy now. Jimmy, I've got you down as, am I right or wrong that you like nice cars?
Yeah. That's quite idea.
Alright, and would it be right in saying that when you go out or used to go out clubbing, you used to spend a reasonable amount of time in the VIP bit?
Yes, never went clubbing to be honest.
Okay, alright, well look, we're going to have to put you in that position, and that's what you did, okay?
Yeah.
Alright, so there's a certain type of people that go out clubbing, and there's a certain type of people who go out clubbing and always go in the VIP bits, yeah?
Yeah.
So, now, Dave was a whole different ballgame to Alan, and Dave was probably pretty much on the unethical side of assumptive closing, yeah? But you can draw your own conclusion, but I'll tell you how he used to work, okay? So he'd meet you in a nightclub, and he always used to have two very pretty girls with him, okay? Which were both his personal assistants, yeah? So they used to go out hunting for people that wanted to buy nice cars, because he used to have a car dealership that sold Lamborghinis, Aston Martins, Ferraris, all that type of stuff, yeah? Okay, so all the higher end stuff, although he wasn't main dealer. So he'd meet you in a nightclub, he'd have the two girls sitting with him, they'd probably come and sit either side of you or something. He'd buy you a drink, and then he'd say, so Jimmy, tell me something, what's your dream car?
Maybe a Porsche 911.
Okay, cool, and the girls would go, oh, good choice. Yeah, and like with their flirty voice and their low tops and their like short skirts on, yeah.
Yeah, you like that? Okay.
Look, he's smiling already. Okay, so, and Dave goes, oh, well, what model would you be buying if you bought one?
I'll probably like the latest model.
Okay, cool.
No, I have to have the latest.
And Dave would make a note, and then he'd turn around, and one of the girls might turn around and say, you do realise, Jimmy, that it's amazing that you can afford something like that, but you do realise it's going to be about, $2,500, $3,000 a month. You can afford something like that.
Yeah, that's nothing. That's nothing. Can't afford it.
And you can see where he's going with this, can't you? Because you're like in the nightclub, and it's like, yeah, and you've had a few drinks, and like, they're pretty girls, so it's like, and he'd find out what colour, what model, all that type of stuff, yeah? Now, what he did is he had quite a lot of car traders go in to see, to drop cars off to see if he wanted to buy them, yeah? So one day, let's say one of the traders came in and they brought in a Porsche 911. What's your favourite colour?
Probably like a metallic grey.
Okay, so grey, and what colour leather? Sorry?
Black leather.
Black leather, okay. So
Yeah.
Dave would ring you up like 10, 11, 10 o'clock in the morning and go, hi Jimmy, it's Dave here.
Hi Dave.
Okay, remember a couple of months ago we were speaking and you said that your favourite car was a Porsche 911?
Yeah.
Yeah, well look, I've got a black one just come into stock. Sorry, a dark grey, dark silver one with black leathers just come into stock.
Okay.
Now, I ain't got time to test drive it with you, but if you come down with your driving licence around lunchtime, I'll give you the keys. You can take it out for an hour on your own if you like somewhere.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'll be there.
Now, who's not going to, if they're into cars, go down and test drive it and cancel whatever other things they've got going on, yeah? Okay, and you're going to get your driving licence, yeah?
Yeah.
So Dave would take a photocopy of your driving licence, say thanks very much, give you the keys, and say, look, okay, you can go for an hour if you like, no problem. Okay, so you're going to go out for a test drive in the car, and meanwhile the girls would walk you out to the car, or one of them, and they'd be going, whoa, that suits you, Jimmy. And they're really like, they were outrageously flirty, right? And they turn around and go, wow, I can't believe you can afford something like that, Jimmy. It's just like so cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can afford it.
And you'd come back and you'd walk into the office and Dave would go, so Jimmy, you can afford a car like this. That's quite impressive.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
I can definitely afford it. Yeah.
I've got some good news for you. I've just had you passed on finance. All you need to do is to sign here, and you can actually take it with you today. Look at his face. And like he's in with the girls in the office, and Dave, and he said, a bit like Billy Big Bollocks. Yeah, I can do. Yeah, I can. Yeah. Because like the lads that used to go in the VIP bar were all pretty much out of the same mould, yeah. And yeah, it was almost criminal what he was doing because he knew exactly what he was doing.
But it worked, isn't it?
And it worked, and he sold so many cars like that. And it's kind of an egotistical, but again, assumptive closing.
Mm.
So that's how he used to do it. And again, it's just another example of how we need, not necessarily be unethically at all, but how we need to act. Because Dave had no reason whatsoever to think you'd say no. Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's a car you wanted, and you probably wouldn't buy it, and you'd probably be shitting yourself when you're signing for it, because you're like, how the hell am I going to afford this? Yeah, that's going to skimp me every month. But you know, you've given it the large to the girls and everything, and you just feel kind of morally obliged that you, not morally obliged, but you know, do you understand what I mean? You kind of, you've given it large, and now you've got to come through on what you've been doing. But Dave's walked you into it, hook, line, sinker, and set the trap, yeah?
Mm.
So there you are. So just remember how important assumptive closing is. If you're going to be successful in negotiating these deals, you have got to 100% believe that your offer is the best offer for that person. Now, let's move on and let's have a look at the actual negotiation process right the way through, from the initial phone call right to the end part. So let's have a look at that now. Let's move on to the advanced negotiation. When you go into a negotiation situation, you are far more likely to be successful and get the outcome you want if the person you're negotiating with likes you. Okay? If a person that you're trying to negotiate with doesn't like you, you've really not got much chance of buying. You know, if it's a salesperson selling to you, that's one thing. But if you're trying to sell something to someone, or you're trying to buy something off them at a discount, they're only going to sell it to you if they like you. So what we're going to do is we're going to set a process for buying discount houses, and it's a process that I've used again and again and again. Now, there used to be another company around called AQS, called a Quick Sale, and they had franchises, and there was another bloke in my area that was always advertising in the area. And I assumed, because I bought over 200 properties in our area, discounted direct to vendors, that because he was in on the same adverts all the time for the same period of time, I assumed he did a similar sort of amount to me. And I saw him a few years ago and found out that he'd only bought just over 30 properties to my 200. So it's like, how did that happen? Why? What was it that I did different compared to what he was doing? And what he was doing is they were making a phone call, he'd go along, he'd make an offer, and he'd leave. And that was it. What I'm going to do is to teach you a process that I've used hundreds of times, that a lot of my students have used hundreds of times, that works, and far more likely to get a deal than if you don't use this, okay? So, first of all, we're going to do what I call rapport building when we get to the property. But before that, we're going to do this thing on the phone. So let's ask Carl if you would like ring in about this property that I've got on the market, that you've got on the market. You've seen my advert, paid cash for properties. Just give me a quick call and say I'm ringing up about your advert.
Hello there, ringing up about your advert.
Hi, sorry, what was your name?
It's Carl.
Hi Carl, you're right. Yeah, look, my name's Glenn, and I basically buy properties that I then tend to do up again and sell on to make a profit. Okay?
Right.
And to be able to do that, just to let you know, to be upfront with you, I'd want to be paying about 85% of market price. So, have you got the property on the market at the moment?
Yes.
Okay, and the price that you got it on for is 140. Okay. So, can I ask you how much you got it in the market for?
It's 140,000.
Okay, all right. Well, look, assuming that I agree that 140 is the correct market price, and assuming the property doesn't need any work doing to it, I would normally pay 85% of 140, which is 119. How does that sound?
I was hoping for more. I was hoping for more. Hello?
Yeah, sorry, I'm listening.
Yeah. So, are you able to do anything better than that?
If I did, I wouldn't be making a profit.
Right.
So, and it's quite a lot of money to outlay to, make a small amount of money.
Right, okay.
Okay. Now, if you said, no, I can't sell it for that, I'd say, okay, well, look, there's potentially a different way we can do this, which for me is the delay completion thing, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, but if you've told me that, yeah, okay, look, 119, yeah, I can just about do that, then what I've done is I've established that you are selling your house and you're happy to sell it a bit cheaper because for some reason you've got a situation going on, whatever it might be, where selling quickly means more to you than getting the best price. Okay? And 95% of house sales, the vendors want the best price. Okay? But I've established that there's something going on. Okay, so all I'm going to do is make an appointment to go and see you. Okay? Now, if I make an appointment at 8 o'clock in the evening, I'm going to knock on your door at somewhere between 1 minute to 8 and 8 o'clock.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not going to be 2 minutes past or 3 minutes past because some people take exception to people who are late. Okay? So even if it means getting there 15 minutes early and waiting up the road, that's what I'm going to do. Okay? Now, as to being dressed correctly, I'm going to be kind of smart casual. Okay? I'm not going to look like I can't afford the property, but I'm not going to be dressed in a suit like you would expect the people who are repossessing you or wherever you got your challenges through, yeah? Okay, because subconsciously you associate suits with the problem, yeah? With the bank or with the building society or whatever. Okay?
Yeah.
Also, it's really important that you get your car that you go around right. Because I've been round to somebody's house and done a deal when they've had somebody else around the day before, and because they turned up in a battered old mini metro, they've actually told them to leave. Because like, how can someone pay cash for properties if they're driving around in a battered old car? Now I know, that was a bloke called John, and he had a lot of money and just chose to be more Warren Buffett-esque and not have nice cars and that stuff. That was just his lifestyle and that was his chosen thing. But also I'm not going to roll up in my Ferrari or something like that. Okay. So I had for a while a Mercedes AMG and I used to park that round the corner. Okay, and walk to the door. And this day I walked to the door, this woman turned around and said to me, "Oh, that was a nice car. Thank goodness somebody who can potentially buy the house cash. Do you know I sent some people away yesterday they'd turn up in a bad old mini metro. Please come in." And I ended up doing that deal, okay. Now, a few weeks later, I turned up in the AMG and parked round the corner and walked to the house, negotiated a deal with the person, and then when I left, I went up the end of the road, and because it was in a close, I had to turn around and drive back past, and he was still on the doorstep. And I saw his whole body language go, ugh. And I knew that he changed his mind about selling it, because, why do I want to sell to that flash git who's got an AMG Mercedes? Okay. So from then on, I used Ford Galaxy. Okay, so you got to get the car right now. Who was it who said they were listening to Nicky Pope the other day on an interview I did with her? Okay, pardon me. You might mention. I remember we were talking about the car that she had before, because she had a right beaten up old Skoda, and she ended up doing it. Yeah, no, Lexus she bought. Okay, but she bought quite a nice it was only a 2 Series Lexus, and she ended up doing a deal that she ended up making nearly £1 million on a delayed completion portfolio, and she never would have done that if she'd have turned up in a beaten up old Skoda. Okay, so you got to be dressed right and have the right look about you when you're advertising cash paid for property. Even if we're not paying cash because we're getting a mortgage, you know, we've got to look okay, and you know they've got to end up feeling comfortable, trusting, liking you. Okay, so Carl, I'm going to come knock on the door, bang on time, and you're more than likely going to ask me in and ask to show me around the house. Because after all, that's what I'm there for.
Yeah.
And
Come in. I'll show you around.
Okay, look, Carl, can I be? Is it all right me calling you Carl? Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Absolutely fine.
Look, can I be cheeky? Can I grab a cup of coffee first?
Yeah, no worries. Come in, take a seat.
And now I'm going to be sitting down on your settee or at your kitchen table, and I'm not going to sit opposite you. I'm going to sit diagonally if I can at the table, because I don't want a subconscious barrier in the way. And I'm not at any time going to have my arms folded or my legs crossed. Okay, because subconsciously that's throwing a barrier in between us, yeah? Or showing that I'm being defensive somewhere. Okay? Now, my job now over the next hour and a half is to have a conversation with you about your favourite subjects. That while that's going on, I'm one, finding out what modality you are. 2, finding out about you and your circumstances, yeah? And I'm not going to just go in like that quick sale bloke used to do, walk around, make an offer and then leave. Okay, now I don't like the analogy of double glazing salesman, but has anyone ever had a double glazing salesman who walks in, does the measurements, leaves you with a piece of paper and leaves? They just don't do it, do they? They're far more likely to sit and talk to you for an hour or so about nothing particular. What they're doing is what I call rapport building. Okay. So one of my clients spent nearly 2 hours talking to a lady about her thimble collection. But because she was so passionate about her thimble collection, you know, she ended up really connecting with him. And I don't think we do it from a fake point of view. Because he actually turned around and said it was actually quite interesting, believe it or not, talking about thimbles from all different places in the world that had stories attached to them. And some of them come from different tribal places and stuff. He said it was actually quite interesting. So if I came to you, Carl, and looked around your lounge, I know I can see a bit of an idea about what's around there. There's that piano in the background.
Yeah, piano in the background.
Okay, so do you play, or is that your kids, or?
I used to play. I don't play anymore. But if you were in this room, you would see a comic collection.
Okay. Okay. So, and what comics would they be? Beano, Dandy, or different?
It's like DC, Marvel,
Marvel, all that stuff.
Superman,
Okay.
Batman.
Okay. Oh wow! How long have you been collecting these? And you know, I'd be interested in this stuff.
Yeah. So I've collected since probably about 10.
Okay, so if you were a lady, I'd be saying okay for about 5 years then. But yeah, you know what I mean. But okay, so where'd you get things like this from? Some of these are really old, yeah.
Yeah. You know, I just people were selling them online. Used to go down to the Forbidden Planet shops down in central London, you know, and just collect them slowly over the years.
And what's your favourite ones?
Probably like the Superman Doomsday storyline.
Can everyone see that just him talking about it is lit up? Yeah? And I could talk to you for like 2 hours and you'd be offering me more coffee because I'm talking about your favourite stuff, yeah?
Well, yeah. It's easier, isn't it? You build that rapport, it's easier to talk to someone. If they're talking about something you love or you like, it's just easy.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, we've got to remember that you've got one of these and two of these, and to make sure that we do more listening than we do talking. Okay? But, you know, for it to be genuine, a genuine conversation, and, you know, if as soon as you say, oh, would you like another coffee? What does that say to me?
You like.
Yeah, that you're enjoying the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You want the person to stick around. You're not in a hurry to get rid of them.
Yeah, and all the time what I want to be doing is mirroring and matching your body language, yeah? Not like over it, egging it, but and if there's a couple in the room, I'm going to look out for which one of them's the rapport leader. And I'm going to go and rapport with you. And if I start moving, and doing certain actions, or whatever it might be, and you start following me, I know you're in rapport with me, and I know that unless you're in rapport with me, you're not going to even consider selling me your house cheap to me. Okay? Now, some people talk really quickly, all right? And if you're with somebody who talks really quickly and you talk really slowly, you're going to have to speed up because you'll drive them mental. My sister talks so articulately slowly, it drives me round the bend to the point where I finish her sentences. Okay, it's like, I know what she's going to say, just fucking spit it out and get on with it, will you, and get on with the conversation. Drives me nuts, okay? And just the same if you're speaking to someone who speaks really quickly, if you speak slowly, you've got to speed up, okay? And it really annoys my sister when I finish off conversations, and then I check with her to see if that's what she was going to say, and she's like, yeah, it is. Well, fucking speed up then, just spit it out. Now, on the other hand, if you're dealing with somebody and you speak really quickly and they speak really slowly, you've got to slow back down again to them because their processor isn't processing at the same speed. Yeah, and you don't want to be having a conversation with somebody who's only hearing half of what you're saying. Okay? And listen to what they say. Actually repeat back some of the things they say. Yeah? So, you know, I'll be saying, well, Carl, it's like, what made you at the age of 10 decide to start collecting them?
Yeah, it's just something I got into.
But you can...
Probably siblings, like my brothers, actually.
My older brothers, yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, but by saying to you, asking you that question about being 10, that's what you told me, all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, this person's actually listening to me. Because most people are waiting to speak rather than listening to the person that's speaking to them. Okay, so to enter into a conversation where I'm letting you do most of the talking and you're talking about your favourite thing is a very fast way to build rapport. Okay, and especially if I'm mirroring and matching. If you speak really loudly, I'm going to make sure I lift up my voice because it's probably because you're a bit deaf. And if you speak softly, I'm going to mirror and match your voice, speed, sound, everything. Now, I'm not suggesting you take it to another level. I remember having a conversation with one of my clients in my office within a group, and she was from Manchester, and I started talking in her accent. Okay. Not deliberately, just because I was. And one of my staff members went, Glenn, are you taking the piss out of her? And I go, what do you mean? He said, well, you're talking in like a Yorkshire accent. And I'm like, I wasn't aware that I was doing that. I've got the right one, right? I'm Manchester, Yorkshire. Or is it round the other way around? But whatever accent she had, she was from Leeds, but whatever accent she had, I was copying it, yeah, subconsciously. So I apologised to her, and she said, you know what, I didn't even notice. Okay, so, but what if you are negotiating with someone and they're like a Rastafarian and they're like, hey man, blah, 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 you can't start replicating a Rasta accent because they might take exception to that, all right? Okay, so we just need to mirror and match as much as possible and try and learn out what modality they are. Okay, if you don't know the modality, go with visual, because 80% of people are visual. Okay, but you'll find that most couples are with somebody else of the same modality because they speak that language, and they wouldn't be together if they didn't. Okay. So, having established all of this and had this conversation with you for an hour, 2 hours, I'm going to turn around and say, okay, so, Carl, can I just share a story with you? I was with somebody who was selling their house quite quickly the other day, and one of the reasons they wanted to sell their house quickly is because they had quite a lot of debt and credit card debt. In fact, they had £30,000 of credit card debt, and the price they needed was more than I could pay and make a profit. But I was able to negotiate with the credit card company a 30p in the pound settlement because they were already in arrears, and the credit card companies accepted 30p in the pound, which meant that instead of 30 grand to pay them, we only needed to pay 10. So their objective was to pay off their mortgage and pay off their credit cards. That's what we was able to do, and then I was able to get the property for the price that I needed it at to make a profit. Okay, so I'm going to go through some questions with you so I can understand your situation totally. So can I ask, you've got a mortgage on this property at the moment. How much is the mortgage? So you say 80 grand?
Yeah, 80,000.
Now, I'm just going to recap here, because if you feel embarrassed about asking them about their mortgage and their financial position, and you start coming across in a non-assumptive way, like you don't own it and you're nervous to ask them a question, they will subconsciously pick up on it and not tell you how much mortgage they've got. Of course, because I've done this rapport building for all these hours, the chances are they're going to give you all the information you need. Okay? So I'm going to say, if you've got any credit card debt, you're going to say no.
No.
Okay, I'm going to ask if you're in arrears. Yes, you're 4 grand in arrears.
Yes, I'm
Okay.
4 grand in arrears.
Okay, so I'm going to ask how that's affecting you.
It's very stressful. It's putting pressure on my relationship. It's difficult times.
And I'm going to make a note on that. And are you losing sleep because of it?
Yeah, some nights, yeah.
And the building society keep chasing you and chasing you and chasing you?
Yeah, letters, phone calls,
Okay.
all sorts.
Okay, cool, alright. Right, so yeah, I understand the situation. You've not got a second charge on the property or anything like that?
No.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to understand the full picture. So I now know what Carl needs for the property, not what he wants, but what he needs. Okay? But I also know what I need to buy it for. The only variable is, because I've gone around there, I've done lots of research before I've turned up, the only variable is how much work's needed. Okay? That's the only variable. Okay? So, yeah, I'm going to ask you all them questions. And I'll also, when we were chatting, I'm going to say, is that, if you had, is there a particular comic book edition that you would own as a prized possession if you could afford to buy it?
I haven't got one that springs to mind. There's so many, but I can't think of one.
So what would 2 grand buy you?
2 grand. Probably an old key issue comic, basically, where something significant's happened in the storyline.
Okay, and how would you feel about owning one of them?
Yeah, it would be nice.
Okay.
It should appreciate in value over time.
Okay, cool. Alright, so sometimes it's a holiday that people want. Sometimes I've done deals where people need money for Christmas and they don't have money to buy their kids Christmas presents. Okay, But I've got that information by talking to people about their favourite thing. Okay. So, well, look, I've done some research, Carl, and what I've noticed is number 17 down the road sold recently for 130, and it looked like it was in reasonable condition. Okay, and number 7 down the road sold for 131 a little while ago. Okay, so I think the realistic market price for this property is probably around 130 as opposed to the 140 you mentioned on the phone.
Okay.
Would you agree with that?
Go and buy what you said, yeah.
Okay. And as I said, for me to be able to make a profit, I need to pay 85% of that, less any work that needs doing. So 85% of 130 is 110.
Okay.
Right, now I'm going to shut up and listen to your reply. I'm not going to say anything. Okay. So you went, oh, okay. All right.
Okay. Yeah.
So you're moving in your head already, price-wise, yeah?
Mm.
Okay. So I've not just walked in off the street, walked around for 2 minutes and offered you 100 grand for the property that's on the market for 140, yeah? I'm there because I've offered 119. I've now dropped it to 110, okay? And the other thing, Carl, as I said, if it needed any work, we need to look at what that's going to cost. So is it all right now if we go around and have a look?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, now look, I've got a form here that we just need to tick some boxes if there's any rooms that need work. But is that all right? Could you do that while we go around? Because I've forgot my glasses.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, now if I go around and don't say that and then I come to 12 grand's worth of work, you're going to go, yeah, right, and not believe me, yeah? But if you've ticked the boxes because you agree that the kitchen needs replacing and the bathroom needs replacing, and that all adds up to 12 grand, and you tell me that, yeah, then you've bought into that 12 grand cost, okay?
Yeah.
So, okay, Carl, so look, what I can do, because that comes to 98 grand, is I can exchange contracts with you within days, and we can call the solicitors and get them to confirm to the Building Society that you've got a deal processing on this sale of this property, which means that they're going to stop ringing. It means they're going to stop harassing you. It means that you should be able to start sleeping at night, and you know the challenges within your relationship should be sorted.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Okay.
That's a big weight off my shoulders.
And look, rather than 98, what I'd like to do is exchange contracts with 2 grand, let you have that immediately, and then you can go and get yourself I'll give you an extra 2 grand on that price, and you can go and get the comic books you want to buy.
Well, you're my saviour.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
So, and that's it. That's my process that I run by to buy a 140 grand house for 100 grand. And as I said earlier, I bought nearly 200 properties like this. And a lot of my clients have done it like this and followed this process. If you just walk in and make an offer or put an offer in the post based on a quick walk around without building rapport, without going through the reasons and the justifications, I'm just nibbling, yeah? Yeah?
Yeah.
But I've justified to you. Now I know you can afford to sell the house for 100. You know, I know it's probably 125 with the work that needs doing to it, but that you're prepared to sell it for 100 because, hey, 1, it's going to be quick. 2, it's solving all your problems with the Building Society. Yeah, and 3, hey, this guy who's come to see me is kind of quite cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It makes sense, doesn't it? Because you built that personal relationship with the vendor.
Yeah, and I don't ask them to sign any paperwork or anything, and I had so few ever dropped out. Anybody got any questions on that process?
You obviously can't do the similar sort of thing when you're working with estate agents, but how much of this do you apply in those kind of scenarios?
Right. First of all, only when I got to a really good relationship with the agents did I ever really get to a point. I actually employed one of the estate agents who I used to get lots of deals off of. Because he was made redundant, okay, not because if he wasn't made redundant I wouldn't have employed him because I was making too much money from him. Okay, now he actually said to me that as an estate agent he was trained to find people who were prepared to pay the prices that his vendors wanted. And he got to a point where he actually said to me, he said, Glenn, I actually spend most of my time now, because he was earning as much from me as he was from his wages, yeah. He said, I got to a point where I was trying to get vendors that would pay the price that would accept a price for you. You know, and when he went out, when he got to the level of where he used to go to take on properties and do the property assessments, he would actually say to people, look, I've got somebody that will buy very quickly at a price of about this, or we can sell it over an 8-week period at this. And a few people bit, and a few people, he passed me their details. Okay, now it's far easier to build a relationship with individual vendors on individual deals than it is having a relationship like that with the agent. You know, literally, he would tell me anything, what was going on with that agency, any prices, anything I needed to know. You know, it's like having a family member in there. Okay, but unless you build that relationship with the agents in the way I showed you yesterday, you know, if I get my clients all the time going, oh yeah, Glenn, I've got this deal I'm going out to have a look at. I'm going, oh, is the agents like meeting you there personally, blah, blah, blah. And no, it's a group viewing. I'm going, what kind of fucking relationship is that you're having with the estate agents? Group viewings? Why aren't they going, psst, got this deal, it's a bit undercover at the moment, they just want this, like, come have a look. That's what you need. Okay, so unless you've got that relationship with agents, in which case you're already in rapport with that agent. You know, you go, here's the thing, you need to go out drinking on a Friday night, even if it's water or lemonade or whatever it is, you know, with your partner or whatever, and mingle with these estate agents and, you know, become a friend. Okay, it's very frustrating in Milton Keynes. There was one part of Milton Keynes, Bletchley, where there was one other buyer who had all 4 agents down that road wrapped around his little finger. And I tried for years to break that, and I wasn't getting any deals from there because this other person was getting them all. Okay? And the biggest of them all was Taylor's out of the 4 of them, so I invited the manager for a round of golf at Woburn, which is quite a nice place to play golf, and he's accepted. And the day before we went, he's asked if he could bring someone with him, and I said, yeah, of course. Now I'm there trying to break this routine and get us to be one of the main buyers, the buying buyer, and I turned up and it's Nigel's turned up, the bloke who's his principal buyer that I just couldn't get by, and he's bought him with him on this round of golf. So yeah, you're not going to build a relationship with every agent, but you need to have about 1 or 2 that you've got a really good relationship. Yeah, and yeah, then when you do a deal, they're going to wrap it up and not try and get higher offers and all that type of stuff. Okay, any other questions on that before we go to our final test of the day? Your ability and your success rate will depend on how well you can build relationships with agents and vendors. Okay? So if you've got a nice, the metaphor, bedside manner, where people feel comfortable with you, and you're fairly good at building rapport with people, then you're going to be fine. Okay? The minute you aren't congruent, the minute you feel like you're trying to rip somebody off, and don't, like, you need to understand that you need to buy the property at a certain price to make a profit, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, that's the bottom line. And you need it at that price in order to make a profit. And what's wrong with making a profit? You've told, it's one of the things with Carl, went on the phone, I said, look, I want to make a profit. And Carl, the fact that I actually said that to you, you know that I'm there to make a profit, but because I said it and said it up front, and you understand where I'm coming from, it breaks barriers down straight away. It takes them out of the equation. And every step along the way, I've gone right. So you've got it on the market for 140. I never argued with you on the phone or disagreed with the price on the phone. I just said, assuming it is the right market price and assuming it doesn't need any work, I'd pay 85% of that, which is 119. You must tell them the figure that 85% is. Otherwise, especially the lower demographic properties, not everyone there understands percentages. I found myself saying that to a few people and then going there and telling them the amount, and they're like, no, I can't sell for that. Because they didn't know how to work out percentages, alright? Okay, any final questions before we move on? So I've explained how I used to do same day refinance. Now we've changed the system slightly. The system's actually changed and it's done via way of an option. So if I look at a land registry typical transaction of a land deal, it wouldn't be unusual for the middleman to take an option with the farmer or landowner to go and get planning and then to sell it on to the end user, Barratt's, the house builder, whatever they are, with planning and making quite a large profit without actually paying out any more than the option fee. The option fee could be £1, it could be 100 grand, it all depends. But the principle is, in an everyday transaction which happens hundreds of times a month in the UK, someone takes an option to buy land, they take the time and effort to get the planning and pay the cost for the planning cost, and then they sell it on without ever owning it, and they get the benefit of the difference between the price they've agreed the option at and the option on what they've sold it on to the end user for. So let's have a look how we can turn that commercial transaction into a residential transaction for buy-to-lets. Okay, so let's assume that you have negotiated a deal on a £100,000 property. The vendor might think it's worth 95, 100. You've negotiated it based on 100 value, and he's agreed to sell it to you for 70 grand. So first of all, your nominee's solicitor will take an option on the property at 70 grand. Okay, so your nominee has an option to buy the property at 70. Now quite often the option doesn't allow them to sell the property on anywhere else. Okay, but the particular option wording that we use is one that says to the owner, if you, vendor, owner, were to sell the property on to a higher value, the nominee gets the benefit of the uplift. So here's what happens. The nominee and the nominee solicitor take an option at 70 grand that says if you sell it for more, they get the benefit of it. Now, the nominee, or the seller, the vendor, sells it to you, and this is your solicitor, for 100 grand. Okay, so you're going to send in your deposit of maybe 25 grand. Okay, and you're going to take a mortgage out of 75. So you're going to apply to buy the property. So you're going to apply for a mortgage because you're buying the property for 100 grand. In fact, that is what you're buying it for. Okay, so here's the thing. Your 100 grand, you send in 25 grand deposit and the mortgage company puts in 75, goes to the vendor's solicitor, and the vendor's solicitor is aware of the option agreement. So let's send the 70 grand to the vendor. And let's just assume, just to make the maths nice and easy, that there's 5 grand of total costs. That means that the solicitor is going to send back 30 grand minus 5 equals 25 grand back to your nominee. Now, just to be absolutely clear, your nominee is not allowed to send it back to you, because if they were, you would have had to have declared that in the system. So that's one for a face-to-face. However, that is the principle. Let me just repeat. Your nominee puts in an option with the vendor to buy the property for 70 grand that states if they sell it for more, okay, the difference has to come back to them. The vendor then sells it to you, who's negotiated the deal with the vendor and explained this is how this works, because at the end of the day I can only afford to do this if I have enough discount to cover off the deposit. Okay, that's your conversation with the vendor. The vendor's solicitor receives the 100 grand from your solicitor, 75 of it from the Building Society. Your nominee is going to have 25k left, and you've covered the 5 grand expenses. If you buy the property slightly cheaper, there's going to be a cash back over and above that sits with the nominee. Okay, and if it's slightly less, you might have to put in 5 or 10 grand here. That's up to you. I wouldn't recommend you put in any sum that you're not going to recover back within 12 months. I do not want to invest any money into something that doesn't give me all my capital back in 12 months. And if you take into account your marketing costs, etc., and you're working on a budget, you need to make sure you get enough back to cover off all your costs as well. Okay, and that is how I'm currently doing it. Slightly different for Scotland. If you are based in Scotland, then you're going to need to email me and I'll send you something totally different. I remember that a few years ago, Scotland banned the use of options, and I had 2 solicitors firms and a couple of very well-known buy-to-let landlords actually paid me a fee to go up and try and solve the problem for them, which I did in an hour, much to their dismay, because it was like, oh my God, it's that simple. And you've had 2 whole solicitors firms trying to find a solution for quite some time. So I enjoyed that anyway, but there we go, I digress. Okay, let's move forward. So how far can you take this? Well, you can take it as far as you like. I know people that have used this process to buy hundreds of properties over a period of time. What's achievable now? I would say comfortably, and some of my clients are already doing this, maybe 10 or 12 properties a year. So I very much doubt anyone's going to do 52 properties in 48 weeks again. If somebody does, let me know. That would be really cool. Okay. So how far can you take it? Over a period of years, there's absolutely no reason why you can't be heading between 30, 50, 80,000 pound a month profit if you just continually build this up. Yes, if we look at delayed completions, which I'll be talking about when I talk about some of the other strategies, there is ways that you can use delayed completions in these. I've had a delayed completion which I did in the last recession, which I'm still paying a very cheap mortgage and renting out, and I haven't purchased the property yet. I will at some point, but I guarantee that property will only cost me £1. If you want to know how that's done, you'll have to ask me when you see me face to face, how did you buy that property for only £1, Len? I've done many of them, so I'd be more than happy to share it with you. What are the hurdles that you're going to come across? Okay, well, look, one of the first things is that you need to consider is how many mortgages you can get now. So one of the little advances I would say to you, like some of the companies will give you Birmingham Midlands, for instance, used to only give 3 mortgages to any individual. However, if you and your partner, your wife, you could take 3 each, so you can stretch it like that. So it's a good idea to speak to a good broker about exactly how you're going to structure it if your intention is to buy over 100 properties. Okay, and if you have over 100 properties in a capital appreciation area, you will be a millionaire before long. It's just a natural progression. One of the other main things to take into account is the new Section 24 rules. Should you buy in your own name, or should you buy in a limited company? If you're buying a limited company, how do you structure it? Well, it's all pretty much the same. Buy-to-let mortgages through limited companies are pretty much dropped to the same cost as if you're buying them in your own name, and you can get more leverage based on the rental calculation, what they call the pay rate. So you can actually borrow a slightly higher, not loan to value, but they take the rent into account at a higher amount when you do it over a 5-year period in a limited company, because they're worried. Because what was Section 24? They've taken away the interest rate relief if you buy it in your own name. So something to make sure you set up right from the beginning if you're just starting, or if you've got some properties already and you're not quite sure how to switch them around, then why not go and have a look at one of our weekly webinars where I did with Simon. Links on here for you, where he explains how you can get around Section 24. I'd like to think that by now you can see the advantage of using the strategies that I teach. This one, building a portfolio no money down, to help you increase your net worth and to help you to increase your monthly cash flow. Sticking to traditional investing, if you're waiting for the capital appreciation to kick into place before you can buy your next few properties, because you're putting cash in for deposits, it's going to take you many years to build up a large portfolio. Most people start with a small amount of money. You're only going to double your portfolio size every 4 years, so that's going to take time. So unless you're Robbie Fowler and you're buying properties in Liverpool, several a week out of your wages, then you need to think again about how you're going to do this. I know that our strategy and my strategy of buying non-money down is the best way to build up a portfolio in your own name that can only go one way with the capital appreciation, that is to make you a millionaire.